Welcome to Target Market Insights, the multifamily and marketing podcast. Each week, John Kasman interviews multifamily and marketing experts to teach you how to find the best places to invest, attract investors, and grow your portfolio. You are listening to Target Market Insights with your host, John Kasman.
Welcome to Target Market Insights, the multifamily and marketing show. I'm your host, John Kasman, and I want to thank you for joining us for another great episode. Now, if you're enjoying this show, do me one quick favor and leave that 5-star rating and review so you don't miss an episode. All right, now check this out. Today, we're going to be talking to Mike Simmons. Mike Simmons is a real estate investor, podcaster, and speaker who has shared the stage with Gary Vaynerchuk at his Agent 2021 conference. He is the co-owner of the wholesaling company Return on Investments, producer and host of the popular podcast Just Start Real Estate, and a partner in Seven-Figure Flipping, one of the nation's largest real estate mastermind groups. Mike currently owns 16 rental properties and has wholesaled and or flipped over 80 properties last year. Most recently, Mike wrote a book titled Level Jumping, How I Grew My Business to Over $1 million in profits in 12 months. Let's welcome to the show, Mike Simmons.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I'm excited about this.
Absolutely, Mike. So I went over your bio and hit some of the high-level highlights of things that you've been able to accomplish. But why don't you take a minute and give us a little bit more context on Mike Simmons?
Yeah, sure. So born and raised Midwest kid, Michigan is where I was born and raised, still live here. My family was heavily tied in the automotive industry, which a lot of people are in Michigan. The goal for me growing up, what my parents really wanted for me was to get into a job that had a union and have the union benefits and the security. I'm a little bit older, so this is back in the late 80s, early 90s. And they just felt like that security was what they wanted for me. And there were no entrepreneurs in my family or anywhere in my network. Like nobody had their own business, and it really wasn't encouraged. In fact, it was probably discouraged to go get a job. Like here's what my dad thought was a perfect, ideal career for his kids: get a job, work every hour that they make available to you, 12 hours a day, 7 days a week if it's available, make all the overtime you can, stay there for 30 years, and then retire at 65. Like that's just what he thought it was the plan. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I actually went down that road. I got out of high school, started in college, got a job at UPS, right? Union, ding, ding, ding. Benefits, ding, ding, ding. My parents were ecstatic. They didn't care if I was in college or not at that point. So I dropped out of college because I'm a dumb 18-year-old kid, right? Got the job at UPS and I'm working. And by the time I was 24 years old, 24-year-old man, I needed a chiropractor appointment 3 times a week just to get out of bed. My back was so bad. I'd wrecked my body by 24 in terms of like lifting heavy objects. And I realized I wasn't going to be able to stay there the rest of my life. So went into the automotive industry, got a job there, was rocking and rolling. The industry kind of hit a downturn, and I went back to college as an adult, as a 32-year-old guy with kids and a wife and a house and all this stuff, and got my degree and started kind of working up the corporate ladder. And I thought, again, for the third time in my life, this is where I'm going to be. Like, this is it. I'm happy. This is what I want. And I did that for about, 5 years until I realized, gosh, this doesn't feel right either. Like, this is miserable. I'm go to work every day with people who hate their life, hate their job. They're miserable. I can't even enjoy a Sunday because I'm so worried about Monday coming and so bummed about it. And started looking for ways to get out of the rat race. And I got on Google and said, invest for retirement, right? Day trading, stocks, the stock market, all these things are what people kind of naturally gravitate to. And I hated it. I couldn't stand reading about stocks and stock market, and I was getting disheartened, but I finally stumbled upon real estate investing, because if you Google investing, you're going to eventually hit real estate. And I started reading success stories. I started going to local meetups. I started buying books, and I was just devouring it. I loved it. I couldn't get enough of it. And that was in 2003. And I didn't buy my first house until 2008. So there's 5 years there. I'm telling you that because I know there's a lot of people out there listening that want to get involved in real estate. They want to do it. They hate their job. They're not satisfied, and they're procrastinating, and they're in the learning phase. And the learning phase is okay, but the learning phase has to have an end, and then execution has to start. And I just stayed in that learning phase for 5 years. And I made excuses. Oh, I'm busy, and my kids this. We moved to a different location. All these things. What it boiled down to was I was afraid. I was afraid, and I couldn't admit that to myself for 5 years until I finally got so disgusted with learning and talking about real estate, going to meetups, going to RIAs, and people ask, oh, you flipping houses, you got rentals. Like, what are you doing? And I had nothing for them. And it was embarrassing. And I finally had to hit the wall and said, I'm just a pretender. I'm not doing anything. I'm learning. And I get these, the shiny object syndrome where everybody who I talk to has a new way of doing things. And maybe I should do this. Maybe I should do that. At the end of the day, I wasn't doing anything. And I just finally got disgusted enough to get out there and start making offers.
Mike, man, you gave us a lot to unpack there. Thank you for sharing the story and giving us some context here. First and foremost, man, a lot of similarities that I heard in your story and even my own story, especially with the automotive ties. For those who don't know, I spent 4.5 years in Detroit, Michigan, working in the automotive industry. My father was very similar to your father, blue collar worker. He actually worked for a dealership, car dealership, for about 16 years. So his mindset was very similar to your father as far as get a good job. You work that job as many hours as you can. You retire from that thing. You get a watch or whatever you get, and you're set. And I remember when I finally got my job at General Motors, working in corporate, by the way. So it wasn't like I was doing hardcore blue collar work. I was working in the ivory towers, at GM. Yeah. And the day I told him I was leaving, boy, he was so disappointed. And but it was what you said, because I didn't have the physical elements, but what I had was it wasn't even burnout. It was the fact, like you said, you look around at your coworkers, you would imagine that this is what people signed up for. I mean, we were all quote unquote successful, and they were all miserable. They were all miserable. I couldn't find one that was a beaming light to say, you know what, I want that lifestyle. I want what that person has.
Right.
You didn't see it. And corporate America just, unfortunately, it did that to me. So I felt a lot of what you said as far as the mindset that you were given from your parents, as far as what to look for in a job and career opportunities. And I imagine many of our listeners kind of went through a similar experience. As you turned to real estate and realized, hey, this is the thing that looks like it's the right path. You mentioned that was 2003, but it took 5 years before you actually pulled the trigger on the first deal. You talked about, it being fear and some other things, but walk me through just the mental psyche, right? Because you've kind of changed careers 3 times at this point. You went to school, you got your degree, you got into a career in corporate America that was a little bit easier than the hard work that you were doing on your back. You realized that, hey, you know what, I need something else. Real estate became that thing. So you had the plan figured out, but it took another 5 years before you started to pull the trigger on the real estate. Walk me through exactly why it took that 5 years.
Yeah, it's a great question, and I'll be perfectly transparent, because I think honestly, this is real life. This is what people are going to go through. So I got the real estate bug in 2003. I started devouring information, and a couple of things happened. I am a self-admitted recovering procrastinator. It didn't go too probably the way you thought I was going to go there, but I'm a procrastinator, and I know that I sometimes have the tendency to put off to tomorrow what I could do today, right? So it was a little procrastination, but I really think a lot of it was because when you get into the learning phase, and I tell people this a lot of times when I talk to them about, if they ask me, how do I get started? What do I do? What's the first step? I try to tell people, listen, I'm not against being prepared for what you're about to embark on. It's irresponsible to not prepare to some level. But the problem is there's too much information out there. It's too easy to feel like with the mountain of information available, you just don't know enough, right? And I've talked to people who have flipped 10, 12 houses, or they have a handful of rentals, and they go, I don't feel like I know enough to, like, a guy literally reached out to me the other day and he said, I have 3 rentals, free and clear, and I want to do more, and I just don't know what to do. I said, do what you just did for those 3 rentals. Whatever you did, do that more. I don't even need to know what you did, right? So for me, it was procrastination meets shiny object, man. I would get a book every week about a new strategy. And then I would go to the local RIA, and it's a bigger RIA. So what do you think happens? They bring people in to talk about how they do things, their style of investing, and you get enamored with that person on stage and you go, oh my gosh, that sounds great. I want to do that. And then the next month, the next person comes on stage. And then I go to a seminar somewhere, I drive to a seminar and they've got gurus from all over the country, and they're really good at selling what they do because they're literally selling what they do, right? They're selling you a program or something, and I'm buying programs and I'm reading books. I can't make a decision. Well, halfway through this process of procrastination and paralysis by analysis, I got divorced. So for me, it was self-pity. It was, woe is me. Why does this happen to me? I couldn't get my head wrapped around what I was trying to do because I was like, my world had crumbled and I was trying to figure out how I was going to just like not be miserable. And that took a couple of years, right? So again, it's all excuses. Even the divorce and making me slow down, it's all excuses. It is. Everyone has control. And at the end of the day, you are where you are, and you had some part to play in that, whatever it was. Even if you get hit by a car, some drunk driver hits you, like, you got to analyze what you could have done differently, right? I didn't do that. So it was like procrastination, too many options, fear, and pity. I wallowed in all those things until I finally hit a point where I got my life kind of straightened out. I was in a good place, and I was like, you know what? I am sick of wanting something and not doing anything. And I've got to take action. I just started taking action. And I think, I am on a crusade, I feel like in my life right now, because I think the biggest cancer to success is procrastination and sitting on the sidelines and not getting started. If you just get started, if you just start, that momentum will carry you to the next hurdle. And if you just do it, like, you just have to get out there and take action, because education is potential energy. It's dormant energy, right? It just sits there. Education doesn't do anything without somebody applying it. You have to apply it. And I wasn't applying. I was just gathering information, doing nothing with it until I started doing something. By the way, when you start doing something and you actually get a little bit of momentum, even if you make mistakes, that education is far more valuable than the education in books. It just is. So it's experience education. That's really what moves you forward.
Yeah, you said something really powerful there. You said the things that were holding you back were procrastination, too many options, fear, and pity. And those four things combined can paralyze anyone from moving forward.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that you were able to snap out of that. And obviously, we wouldn't be talking today if you didn't. But I think that's something that many people are going through. Many people listening right now. I've been listening to, whether it be this show or other shows, for a long time, maybe years, maybe months, and have continued to analyze deals and opportunities and thought about hiring a coach or a mentor or signing up for a program or attending an event or going to a conference. Or maybe you have done some of those things and you still haven't pulled the trigger. I think at that point, you have to step back and ask yourself, what's stopping me? What is the issue? What is the hurdle that I'm facing? And if it's one of these things, you just have to get started, and you can get started by stepping back and saying, hey, maybe I don't have to do everything myself. Maybe I can get on a team. Maybe I can partner with someone else. Maybe I can find another way to take a small step forward that allows me to remove the negativity, the obstacles, and just address that so we can keep moving forward. You started to talk about all of this stuff being excuses. And then in 2008, you pulled the trigger. What was it that made you snap, stop blaming the divorce, stop blaming the fear, stop blaming the pity, and actually moving forward and doing that first deal?
Yeah, a couple things. One thing was I got divorced at some point mid-2000s, got remarried a few years later. But I didn't bring my wife at the time. I didn't bring her along on the journey. I was doing all this sort of like in my spare time, nights and weekends. I was absorbing, but I wasn't keeping it a secret, but I just wasn't sharing it either. I was kind of internalizing everything. And I realized, if I'm going to really be able to do this, it's going to take some sacrifice. There's going to be things that I'm going to have to say no to, and times I'm not going to be home. And if she's not on board with this, it's going to be real difficult to be successful. So my next goal was to expose her to it. Like, I had spent almost 5 years, right? Like, getting myself ready to do this. And my wife is conservative by nature. I'm a little bit more of a risk taker. So I knew I had to somehow get her on board in a relatively short period of time in a way that was real, that she could really get behind it and not just say, okay, if you want to do it, right? But some where she'd be excited. So I found a local guy. I'm going to say guru, but he's actually a really nice guy. I don't want to use the negative connotation, but he's just a local guy with experience. And he was holding what he called a weekend fly on the wall boot camp. And it was essentially you pay $2,500 for 2 days worth of in a room with about a dozen people, and he's going to walk through the whole process of real estate investing with us. There were some handouts and some things like that. And at the end of the day, the material that I got for $2,500 was not worth $2,500 for sure. But what it did was, it was enough information packed into like a speed dating environment where my wife could fully get up to speed, see the potential. She's surrounded by people who are excited to do it, not just me. And it sort of rubbed off on her. So she was on board, but maybe more importantly for a wife that's conservative, we spent $2,500. And in her world, you're not spending $2,500 and sitting at home on the couch and not doing something. We spent money, you will go do this, right? So it was sort of like, you hear people talk all the time. If you have a goal, tell the world, tell everybody, because it helps keep you accountable, and it helps keep you, like, it's a lot easier to say, hey, I want to lose 10 pounds. You don't tell anybody, you don't lose 10 pounds. Oh, well, nobody knew anyway, right? But if you tell all your friends and put your picture on Facebook and I'm going to lose 10 pounds and you don't do it, you've got to sort of go back and explain yourself to everyone that you told you were going to do it. So that was the effect I got with my wife. I basically said, this is what I want to do. I'm serious about it. Let's spend $2,500. But wait, $2,500 we really didn't have. I mean, we did, but we put on a credit card, right? Like, that's debt. And she doesn't like debt. So doing that kept me accountable. My wife, the person who's in the house with me every day, was now keeping me accountable. Hey, you just got home from work. You ate. I see you're just sitting there watching TV. Shouldn't you be analyzing deals? And that happened a couple of times before I was like, wow, yeah, you're right. I need to get out of my pattern here. And that's what it was. And then the first time I got an offer accepted and the first flip that I did, tons of mistakes. But I mean, it was like, it's a bad analogy because it's a negative thing, but it was like a drug. I did it the first time and I was like, whoa, I like this. I want to do this more. It's like a positive drug, right? So once I did that and got through the fear of all the things that could go wrong, because things went wrong, but I still made good money at the end of it, like, I was hooked. And more importantly, my conservative wife that needs to see things to believe them, she saw it and she believed it. And she was like, now go do 10 more of those. Like, that was awesome. So and that's all I needed. And I didn't realize what a risk taker and what an action taker I actually am if I'm put in the right environment. Because when you're in corporate, you know this. You said GM, was it? Yeah. You work GM in Detroit, Michigan, in the automotive industry. They don't exactly want you to be a free thinker outside the box. They want you to just get in the line, do what you're supposed to do. They're going to constrain you in every way, but expect you to perform miracles. And once I got out of that environment and I was like, I could call the shots, I could make things happen. I didn't have to run it up the chain of command and be told that's not how we do things. Like that was an awakening for me. I realized, holy crap, this is my environment. This is where I want to be. And I was off to the races.
Listen, man, that sounds so amazing because the fact that you were able to connect with your wife, share something that you were passionate about, that you had been kind of building for the last 5 years, and get her to that seminar, and whether or not the financial investment was worth it, the ultimate results absolutely panned out. And I think sometimes we have to make some sort of commitment like that, because it's one thing to go out and have someone, give you the strategy or tip that changes your life and allows you to go make that back 5-fold, 10-fold, whatever. Yeah. But it's something else just to invest in yourself, to actually spend money. And I'm not just talking about a book or whatever, but to actually spend a significant amount of money on something that is going to force you to keep yourself accountable. Yep. And if you have that partner, that spouse or someone else, and they know you've invested that money, it just amps up the accountability. And you said it, if you're sitting at home on the couch and she's like, dude, we just dropped $2,500 on this seminar. I know you're not just going to sit here and watch TV. And you're like, oh yeah, I guess you're right. I need to get that back. And that's the thing. It's the difference between, what you pay for and what you get. And that return on your investment is really the key thing. So, I know I talked to a lot of people about, attending events, especially high ticket events or hiring a mentor or coach. And it's not for everyone. And the first thing you have to understand is, what are you looking to get out of this? And what do you hope to get? You need that kick in your ass to take it to the next step, to have something you can look and be like, shit, I've invested this money. I've invested in this result that I'm trying to get to. I better stay committed to this process in order to see that through. So it's really great to hear you talk about how that was able to push you forward. You got the first deal, you started doing more. I want to fast forward on your journey because as you started to do this, at what point did you transition from working your day job and doing this on the side to, you know what, I have a full-time business that I'm going to run and operate?
Yeah. It took me about four and a half years to get out of my corporate job. So up until that point, you know, you lived here in the wintertime. By 5 o'clock, it's pitch dark out. Like sun's down, you're done. So I'd get off work at 5 o'clock in the winter and all through the summer, frankly, too. And I'm walking through foreclosures and houses that are abandoned. I'm in basements. It's 0 degrees, no heat, no electricity. I've got my cell phone like trying to light up so I can see the electric box. You know what I mean? So I worked like that, nights, weekends, holidays, whenever. My lunchtime a lot was pretty much real estate consumed. I did that for about four and a half years while I was building my business, and it was going great. Honestly, locally in my local RIA and in my local market, we were speaking at. I was starting to speak at events like local ones, and they were having me on stage talking about what I was doing because in my market, you know, doing 1 to 2 deals a month, that was huge. That was big. You know, that's a lot. I didn't know anybody who had ever done more than 25 deals in a year. Like I had just never heard of it before. So we had a lot of local success, and that was good and bad. It gave me confidence, which was nice. It kind of fed that addiction that I had to like building and growing. And but what was bad about it was it didn't allow me to expand my expectations for myself because I felt like I'm sort of on top of the heap, or I'm one of the people locally that people look to as someone who's got a lot of success. So I wasn't looking beyond that. And I always tell people, on a clear day, if you're standing in a field and there are no trees and you can just, you know, as far as you want to see on a clear day, you can see for probably a mile or two, depending on how good your eyes are and how clear the day is. But if you stand on a building on a clear day, you can see for miles and miles and miles on a clear day, right? So for me, I could only see like a mile because that was my environment. That's all I had ever thought about. Once I joined a mastermind and I surrounded myself with people who were achieving at a lot higher level than I was, people who had much bigger businesses, much more success, and had kind of been down the road farther than I was, I started feeling like I was standing on a building. So I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. Like I was doing, you know, at the time, like 15 to 20 deals. And I was talking to people that are doing 100, like legitimately doing 100. And I'm like, wait a minute. I'm running around working 60, 70, 80 hours a week, like crazy to try to do my 15, 10 to 15. You're doing 100 and you're telling me you're not working more than 4 or 5 hours a week? Well, it's because they built a team and they trained people and they had systems and processes that they put in place. So yeah, they don't unless they want to grow like a lot, hyper growth. But if you just want to kind of keep going down the field like you're going, and you have people put in place who know what they're doing and they have a specific job and it's all systems and processes, I mean, you can have some time, right? And that blew my mind. I had never heard of that before, but I was able to sit down with folks and say, okay, your business is 4 years. In other words, 4 years ago, you were where I am right now. And I want to be where you are. And it took you 4 years. What did you do from the time you were where I am to where you are? How did you hire? How did you train? How did you create systems? Like, what did you do? And then what did you do wrong? What were the mistakes you made that you wished you didn't do and they could have made, things could have been smoother? And if you get people's hindsight and you can use it as your foresight, imagine how powerful that is. If you ask me what I did to get where I am and you're 4 years behind me and I can show you the roadmap and tell you where the potholes are, well, I just took that information from these folks that I was learning from. And I said, if it took them 4 years to get there and they had to figure it out on their own with no help, what if I just applied what they said? Could I condense that? Like, could I do it sooner than 4 years? And that's exactly what the basis of my book is. Like, I took this information, I smashed it into a year and I made it happen. Now, did everything go perfectly? No, I experienced my own challenges and things that they didn't prepare me for because it didn't happen to them. It wasn't their business. So I definitely had to have some learning curve in there. But the fact of the matter is, other people's hindsight, use it as your foresight, and you can really exponentially change your business.
Yeah, Mike, what I love about your story is I think it's very practical for a lot of our listeners, right? I mean, sometimes you talk to people and they're just amazing from day one and they just built this amazing portfolio and they grew and life is great. And there's not a whole lot the average person can learn from that.
Yep.
But in your story, we talked about kind of having that limiting belief starting out, kind of the direction from your father to really just get a good job, work as many hours as you humanly can and retire, and how you kind of continue to transition from the corporate world until you got to the point where you realized it was real estate. But even that took 5 years to really get going. And then as you started flipping and doing a house a month and really kind of rising to the top of your local sphere, you realized that, hey, there was an opportunity. And I'm curious to hear, like, I know the mastermind got you to level jumping, but I want to come back to why the mastermind, because it sounds like you were thriving locally with your 1 or 2 deals a month. My guess is you were making enough money doing that to be satisfied, at least temporarily, to change your jobs and things like that. What was the trigger to say, hey, you know what? I'm standing right here. I can see the 1 to 2 miles out. Let me get to the top of the building so I can see many miles out. What was that trigger?
So, I suffer from something a lot of entrepreneurs do. And anyone listening to this who has a business or they feel like they're an entrepreneur probably can relate. I set goals for myself. Okay. But once I get there or get close, I start losing passion for that goal because I've pretty much gotten there or I have gotten there, and I'm always looking at what's next. So unfortunately, if I have $1 million business and you have a $5 million business, I'm going to want to know what you did to get to 5 million. And when I do, I'm going to look for someone with a $10 million business and go, what did you do to get to 10? I have a hard time being satisfied, right? So it's good and bad. The good part is it propels me. It makes me strive, and I'm never comfortable. I'm always trying to have more success and try to do more and do better. The problem is I'm never satisfied. I mean, like I envy people who, and I have friends who they make a good living. They have a nice house. They have a great family. They couldn't care less about making any more money. They just want to live their life and walk their dog in the morning and come home and sit on their back porch and sip iced tea. Like I envy that more than you can ever know. Like my brain won't allow me to be comfortable enough to do that. And I think a lot of times that's how entrepreneurs are. We're always a little bit afraid if we take our foot off the gas that we're gonna just go out of business. And that's a little bit of a sickness, but it's kind of how I am. So I started my podcast a long time ago, and I met a guy through the podcasting sphere, that whole, network, that world, who was doing 100 deals a year. He was flipping houses, doing 100 deals a year. And at the time, I was purely a house flipper. Not so much now, just a house flipper, but that's what I was. And I got to know him personally. And I, because your first reaction when you're doing 10 deals a year and they say you're doing 100 and he's like, I'm bored, you go, BS. I don't believe him. I think it's a lie. Now, the one thing that was interesting about him was at the time he wasn't selling anything. Nobody knew who he was. He didn't have his podcast yet, although he was building it. He wasn't selling a course. He didn't have a book. Like, he had nothing to gain from telling me that. And as I got to know him personally over time, I realized, wow, he's not kidding. He really is doing this kind of business, and he really is bored. His wife is telling him, go do something because you're driving me nuts. And I couldn't believe it. And then probably a year and a half after that, he reached out to me and said, hey, I'm going to start this mastermind of people who have doing good business, big businesses, or they're growing, they're aggressively growing their businesses. Are you interested in being a part of it? And it was like, yes, sign me up. I want to be a part of this group. I want to surround myself with people who are at a higher level than me and at the same level. And I want to feed off of their knowledge and their experience. And so he formed this group. It was literally 20 people. And we met up in this room in California back in 2016, January. And it was mind-blowing. It was a room full of people who had big aspirations. They already were doing a pretty good business. Most of them had a decent business. Some of them had a really big business, and they were huge. And just surrounding myself with those people made me realize, holy crap, I am a big fish in a very small pond. I want to be a small fish in a big pond and then hopefully grow to a big fish in a big pond. And that was really what propelled me. It was like I could see for 2 miles, like you said, like the analogy I used. I had never been on top of a building before. I didn't know you could see farther than that until I got up there and I looked and went, oh my goodness, I can see so much farther. Everything is clearer for me down the road than it was now. So that was really it. Just knowing what was possible. I didn't think it was possible before. So I just had that epiphany. And again, if you put me in a room with billionaires, I'll tell you right now, I won't be satisfied with where I am. I'll want to be a billionaire. Like, that's just how I am.
I mean, I think that the amazing thing too is that you can build these relationships and connect with people and learn from them. You talked about, what did you do in the 4 years that I can maybe do in 1 year? And being a part of this mastermind, connecting you with so many other people that have a different vision, have built their businesses to be very successful. And now you're in rooms where you can kind of leverage some of those insights and implement them into your own business. And the thing that's really remarkable to me is just even listening to the way you tell your story. There's two different people, and it goes back to that trigger point, right? There was the person who started off who had ideas, had dreams, had aspirations, but the fear, the pity, the too many options, all that was holding that person back from finding the focus and purpose to move forward. And then once you got that kick in the butt, going to that seminar, you're able to focus. And then that allowed you to unleash it, because with that positive momentum, it became a snowball effect where you had that one win led to 2 wins. And it just continued to grow from there to now you're speaking on stages, which you never would have had the opportunity to speak on the local stages. And that led to, hey, you know what? I need a bigger stage. Let me get in this mastermind group. Oh, there's more ways to grow. And it just happens like that. And I want our listeners to understand that it doesn't sound like you ever sought out to be a guy who is, hosting podcasts and events and writing books and doing all these things. But what happens is things just snowball and you start building relationships and you can help other people. And that's how the world works. And it all starts by taking action. And going back to what we talked about is just get started. If you can take action, do whatever it takes to get that first deal done, the world just opens up to you. And then it's up to you to decide what opportunities you want to take advantage of or be a part of, or what opportunities you want to pass. But if you keep accepting opportunities to grow, then there really is no limit on your potential and what you can become. So it's amazing listening to your story, just because I see every step and every decision, how you leveled up and made it to kind of the next layer because of, the success you were having and then propelling yourself with the goals that you set. Let's talk about the book a little bit. Level jumping when did you come out with the book?
The book actually became available on June 1st of this year, 2020. So it's still relatively new out there.
Okay. So Level Jumping just came out in June. And what inspired you to pen this book? And I wanted to hear some of the key lessons that our listeners and viewers can gain if they were to check this out.
Definitely. So what kind of got me to think I need to do it was, I'm in this mastermind, right? I joined this mastermind, and in the beginning, the first meeting we had, I told you it was 20 people. We were in this Dana Point in this hotel room or hotel conference room, and the guy who ran it,
Regis by any chance?
I can't remember now. I think that sounds right. I just know it was Dana Point.
Beautiful place, man.
Yeah, it was right on the water. So yes. And there was a challenge thrown out to the group, this group of mixed match of people. There were the 2 people running it had huge businesses. Everyone else had growing businesses. And there was a challenge thrown out. The first company in the room to get to $1 million in gross profits by the end of the year would be sent on an all-inclusive trip to Fiji with their spouse. And I'm insanely competitive. And I called my wife on the lunch break when we were there, and I'm like, hey, they put up this challenge. She's like, oh, you win that thing. I want to go to Fiji. So my partner and I just put our nose to the ground, and long story short, we got there. So we ended up going to Fiji. We got to $1 million in gross profits. And from that point, in this mastermind, I sort of got this little bit of like this level of fame, kind of like the first person to break the 4-minute mile, right? Everyone thought it was kind of like, oh, that's a huge feat. And then someone breaks it, and pretty soon a lot of people start breaking the 4-minute mile because it's possible. So that's kind of what happened in this group. We did it, and then we were followed by dozens of people who did it in the subsequent years. But people always ask me, how did you do that in that first year? How did you go from where you were to over $1 million? How did you do it? And I've retold this a million times. And so I just said, I should just put it in a book. It's people want to know. I did it. And I know it's interesting. I did it, but I don't realize sometimes how interesting it is for people who haven't done it, right? They want to know. So that's why I put the book together. Now, what the book is not, it's not like full of apps and software and things that I use, because those things come and go, right? Software that I used back in 2016 to do that, it's irrelevant. I'm not even using some of it now. And so it's not full of like tools that come and go. It's full of practical application, things that you can do that you should do in your business if you want to level jump. And when I say level jump, a lot of people go, what is that? What is level jumping, right? Everyone knows what it means to go to the next level, right? I want to take my business to the next level, all right? You're on level 1, you want to take to level 2. Well, what I say is, if you can use other people's hindsight as your foresight, if you can surround yourself with the right people, ask the right questions, and then execute, you don't have to go from 1 to 2. You can go from 1 to 3. You can skip levels if you get that kind of hindsight, right? So that's what it is. Now, the book is full of a lot of it covers how to hire, when to hire, right? How do you do that as a small company? I'm not talking about Apple, how they hire. It's totally different than how you're going to hire as a solopreneur. When you hire that first person, things like, I don't have enough money to hire somebody. I don't have enough revenue, right? There's some validity to that, but it's also a myth. There are things that you can do. For example, because I know people are going, what do you mean? I don't have any money. How do you do that? So one of the first people I hired, not the first person, one of the first people I hired was my sales guy, right? So I switched my model a little bit more from flipping to I started doing more wholesaling and buy and hold, right? Building a rental portfolio and then wholesaling properties. So I hired a sales guy because I was doing a lot of marketing and I was getting a lot of leads and it was all coming in, and I was going on appointments. I was going out on the seller appointments, and I thought it was okay. Like I'm adequate as a sales guy. I'm not a great sales guy. I know that, but I thought I'm doing okay. Well, I brought in a sales guy, and when I brought him in, he was closing at 2 to 3 times the rate that I was. It was insane how much better he was. Now, how did I bring such a great sales guy in when I didn't have tons of money to pay him? Simple. In my case, I found someone who already had a full-time job as an local on-the-road salesperson. He was in pharmaceutical sales, nothing to do with real estate. And he had a local route that he did, but he was a killer in their company. He was an absolute killer. He was the best sales guy they have. He was one of those guys that just could destroy his day job, and have tons of time during the day. He would go home and play video games during the day because he was the highest grossing salesperson in his company, and he was half the time home playing video games because he had free time. So he got a hold of me. He wanted advice on real estate, and he's like, hey, I want to learn from you. Let me go out on the road and see how I do in sales for you. So I hired a guy who had a full-time job. I paid him a commission. I only had to pay him when I made money, and he started running appointments for me, and he was destroying them. He had the same amount of leads I had, but he was closing. It would take me like 5 or 6 appointments to get a deal. He was getting one every 2 or 3. Like, he was just closing these things like crazy. And so once he started closing those like crazy, I started having him answer the phones for me too. So when marketing calls came in, he'd answer the phone. He would set up the appointment, but he would create rapport with that seller. And so when he shows up on their doorstep, they're already kind of buddies, right? He already created a relationship with these folks. So he goes in their house, and the close was just a formality almost. Well, he started doing that really well, and I thought, man, I don't want him answering the phones. He's closing deals like crazy. The phones is taking up too much time. I hired a phone person. Now I don't care how much the phone rings because it isn't slowing anyone down. That's their job. So what did I do? I started dumping more money into marketing. The money that the increased revenue I was getting from my star sales guy went back into marketing. Now the phones are ringing more. He's going on more appointments. He's closing more deals, back into marketing. And that's how I built my business from the start. Now, there's things in the books like tracking your metrics. Like, if you don't know your numbers, how much money does it take to generate a call? What does that call cost you? Every time the phone rings, what does it cost you? How many calls does it take to get an appointment? How many appointments does it take to get a deal? What does it cost per deal? Right? These are the numbers you have to know, because in a business, it's like flying a plane, right? We can get off the ground with a plane and we know we're in the air. In other words, in business, we know we're making money. There's money coming into the account every month, and there's money going out. So the analogy is, I'm in a plane, I'm in the air. I know I'm in the air, But if you don't look at your instrument panel, you don't know if you're gaining altitude, losing altitude. You don't know if a mountain's coming up. Like, you're just in the air, but you could be crashing for all you know. So tracking your numbers is a huge part of scaling your business. If you don't know your numbers, you will fail. Eventually you'll fail, right? And God forbid you start making a lot of money without tracking your numbers, because chances are the more money you're making, the more you're probably losing somewhere and you don't even know it, right? So you have to track those numbers. And then as you bring people in, this is the biggest key to scaling your business. I'll tell you right now, it's not the sexiest answer, but I'm telling you it's the truth and it's a fact. In the automotive industry, you saw this, John. I know you did. They would take, in the engineering department, they would take the most talented engineer in that department, best output, best engineer, and they would promote that guy or gal to the engineering manager. And they would suck at it. They would be bad because they're not managers. They're not leaders. They're not motivators. They're good engineers. They're good technicians. They're good operators. But they would promote them as a way to reward them, and then it would almost always go poorly. So in business, we get really good at marketing. We get good at getting the contracts. We get good at hiring contractors and managing contractors and selling deals or whatever the case may be, raising money. We get good at all that. And then when we start hiring people and putting those into those roles and we're not doing it anymore, we realize our job is to lead, inspire, train, motivate. That's what we are. And we're not that. We're not prepared for that. We didn't get those skills when we were an operator. So my book helps people bridge the gap between I'm an operator, now I'm a leader, and I have to inspire, train, motivate. And how do you do that? And then more importantly, how do you create a team of people that would run through a brick wall for you and your company? They love it. They love what they do. Well, there's a lot of ways that you have to purposely go about that. Otherwise, you're going to have this turnstile of people. And I did it in the beginning. That first year when I scaled up to 1 million, guess what? Here's the secret behind that, or the dirty little truth. I burned through a lot of people to get there. I brought them in. I threw a ton of work at them. I expected I'm paying them. They're just going to kill it. And I would push them and ride them and just, the horse crop. And I was just riding them hard. And they would get burned out and leave. They didn't sign up for getting into this like meat grinder, because I didn't treat people the way they need to be treated. I just brought them in, threw a ton of work and said, go. And we went through a lot of people. It took me a while to learn that's not how you cultivate a culture in your company, a culture that people care about, that they're passionate about, and they want to come in and do it. So that's the book in a nutshell.
Make sure you check that out. Level jumping, lots of great insights right there on how to get to not just the next level, but to skip a level. And really appreciate the context that you provided there. Let's move on to our Bullseye Round.
All right, let's do it.
Give me a failure or an apparent failure that sets you up for later success.
Okay. The biggest failure financially I've had in my business was a property that I bought. I was going to wholesale it. So in transparency there, I've got the contract. I found a buyer. I was going to put them together at closing and make money in the middle. The buyer backed out at the last minute, and I let my ego get the best of me. And it didn't, by the way, this was a higher end property in Michigan. This wasn't in my bread and butter. This was so in Michigan, a bread and butter property, I'll buy anywhere between $50,000 and $100,000 would be my price. It'll end up retailing for $150,000 to $200,000. That's pretty much a standard deal. Well, this house, the buy-in was like $275,000 and it was worth like $400,000, right? So the buying pool was smaller. I should have thought about that, but somebody backed out. I didn't want to have to bail on the seller. So all ego, I raised the money overnight, bam, put that thing together. And at the end of the day, we ended up losing a ton of money because the ARV that I came up with was off a little bit. And we made a mistake. Instead of renovating it right the first time when we were in the spring, summertime, when it was going to sell the best, I did I did just like lipstick on a pig kind of a thing, put it out there on the MLS, didn't sell. I would take it off the MLS, do a little bit more, put it back on the MLS. Like the worst thing I could do, middle of winter, I'm over leveraged, holding costs are killing me. I ended up losing 6 figures on that property. But it taught me that ego has to go. I have to put that thing in check. It isn't about ego. It isn't about I'll make this happen. I'm Superman. I can do anything. Sometimes you have to look at things and understand it is what it is and kind of make a smart decision. I made an ego decision and it burned me.
Give me a digital or mobile resource you recommend for your business.
So one good one, especially if you're doing driving for dollars, you're looking for whether it's multifamily, single family, whatever it is, there's an app called Deal Machine. And it's an app where you drive around, you take a picture of the property, you can skip trace it, get the phone number and the mailing address, and send them a postcard right from the app, where a lot of times you drive around, you see this small multifamily or whatever, duplex, and you're writing things down, you're taking pictures, you're trying to match up your pictures with what you wrote down, and it's kind of a mess, and most entrepreneurs aren't that organized. Well, with this app, you can take a picture, you can send a postcard, send them a text, skip trace them, call them if you want, right there in front of the house, and it's all done right for you. So it's a pretty good little app.
Give me a book that you've recommended or gifted the most in the last year.
Extreme Ownership, Jocko Willink. I'm a huge fan of It's All on You. Good, bad. You take ownership of it, you're going to go a lot farther. The people that I see in life that are always looking for someone to blame are the ones that are always struggling to make things happen. They're never happy.
What's a daily habit that helps you stay focused on your goals?
So the daily habit that I have that keeps me focused is, it sounds silly, but I just discovered it. I really like it, and it's a little bit touchy-feely, but I'm not a big fan of affirmations and meditation, all that. People love it. I've never been a big fan, but what I do is I listen to motivational speeches. I try to do it every single day. And there's some websites out there and things that were YouTube where there's like 10 minutes and it's just motivational talk, motivational speak. It really does rev me up. It's very much like if you leave, like if you're old enough to remember those like Rocky movies. Like when I was a kid, I watched Rocky movie and I get out of the movie and like I wanted to box. I wanted to work out because that montage got me excited, right? I had thought at one point in the last year, what if I could inject that kind of enthusiasm in the morning every single day? How much would that propel me to get through the day and be really excited? So I do this. It helps me a lot, actually. It keeps me focused, especially first thing in the morning.
What's crazy is you just saying Rocky movies brought chills over my arms, shoulders, and my back. That's crazy how visceral
I know
those scenes are, and just to get people motivated and inspired. I mean, just dun 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 dun. I mean, like it's crazy. But to your point, I mean, if you need something to get you in the right mindset, whether it's motivational videos, motivational quotes, those movies, great way to kind of get fired up, and just literally the chills came off me. And I'm like, man, that's amazing that Rocky had that kind of impact.
I mean, it's like biohacking, right? I want to do what makes me get inspired every single day, even if it's watching something or listening to something, like you said. Yeah, it works.
Yeah. What's one thing you know now that you wish you knew when you were starting out?
The one thing that I wish I knew now was, new investors focus on the wrong things a lot of times. I spent way too much time thinking of a name for my business. I spent way too much time worrying about contracts, and I don't have the right contract for this situation. Like, I spent time worrying about the miscellaneous tools that I was going to use, and I wasn't focused enough on the end goal. I was focused on the macro instead of the micro, or the micro instead of the macro. I think people need more of a macro outlook on things. Look when you're driving, you don't look down at the road right in front of your hood, right? You crash. You got to look up, and I didn't look up enough. I was too focused on the minutia that I was involved in.
What are you curious about right now?
I'm really curious. I kind of mentioned it, but like biohacking. I'm really curious. I think that the human body and the human mind is very programmable, and it's very manipulatable, if that's a word. You can manipulate it, right? And I'm real interested now in how do you manipulate your brain and your body, for that matter, in ways that are productive and conducive to getting you where you want to go, right? And I mentioned, I threw out there meditation and said, I don't really do it, but I know those kind of things really can help program you to be successful. And I'm real interested in that right now. What can I do? What habits can I form that will help me succeed that I don't even do right now? That's what I'm doing.
All right. So I know you're in Michigan, but not in Detroit. What part of Michigan are you in?
I live in a town called Troy, which is about 30 minutes north of Detroit.
You're in Detroit. Yeah, you're in Troy. I used to
Suburbs.
Spend a lot of time in Troy myself. So
yeah.
All right. So you're out in Troy. There's a lot of good places to eat in Troy. Give me the best place to grab a bite.
Okay. So that's a good question, because there's a lot of things that come and go. I'm going to name something in Detroit, though. You're going to know this place probably. I don't know when you were here, but there's a place that's very famous in Detroit. Well, there's two places, actually. I'll give you two places. I'll give you a bonus place. Number one, there's a restaurant called Slo's Barbecue. Slo's is amazing barbecue. There's a line out the door half the time. It's an amazing place to eat. And if you're in Greektown, which is more near downtown area, in Greektown, there's a little restaurant called the Pegasus. It's got the best Greek food you'll ever taste in your life. It's amazing. That's where I take everybody. When they come into Detroit, I usually take them to Pegasus because it's awesome.
Yeah, two really good options right there. Slows is absolutely world famous as far as Detroit cuisine goes. That was a special treat to go out to Slows, and you needed some extra time to make sure you could get in. So excellent choices there. Well, listen, Mike, you gave a lot of great information. I really enjoyed hearing your story and really just how relatable it is to a lot of things that people are going through as far as overcoming procrastination, overcoming the limiting beliefs of, getting a good job and working that job until you retire, and overcoming the different obstacles to make your dreams come true. And then how do you basically really leverage the insights from other folks and the successes they had in your masterminds to jump levels and really get your business in a place where you could free up some of your time as well as take your business to the next level. So really appreciate you sharing those insights. For listeners and viewers who want to learn more about you, maybe get a copy of your book, what is the best way to reach out?
Yeah. Thank you for that, by the way. So the name of the book is Level Jumping. For those of you who are watching, so what it looks like. If you want to go check it out on Amazon, you can do that. You can reach me directly at on my podcast. You can go to Just Start Real Estate Podcast and you can reach out through there. And then if you're interested in having time to sit down with me personally and just pick my brain, I'm going to be at an event called Flip Hacking Live in October. And if you go to juststartrealestate.com/flip hacking live, you can get all the info you need. I'll be there for 3 days. Very accessible. I'll be walking around. I'll sit down. We can have lunch even if you want. I mean, just grab me and pull me aside, and I make myself very available for 3 days.
Mike, pleasure talking to you. I hope you have a great day. We'll talk to you again soon, okay?
Thank you.